I am Jax. My mission: circumnavigate the globe by air balloon. I've crossed oceans and continents, but the most dangerous territory is always the unmapped one. This is the Silent Range. No signal, no forecasts. Pure reliance on my own skill and arrogance. What I didn't know was this region played by a different set of weather rules. It hit, a black unnatural maelstrom. It swallowed the light and fried every electronic system I had. The Zephyr went blind. Then I saw them. Not clouds, not birds. Colossal, dark-winged figures, streaking through the storm like arrows. They were the Gale Raptors. I knew I was finished. A blinding explosion. I had only one choice left: the chute. My final calculation was a desperate gamble. I lost consciousness for a moment, waking only to crippling cold and piercing pain. My chute delivered me into an abyss, but this was not the ground. I opened my eyes, the clouds parted, below me was pure void. Above me was a city, built upon unimaginable mountain peaks. A sudden gust slammed me against a stone staircase. The chute netting tore. I was slipping, clinging to thin ropes. That's when I heard the sound. Not the wind, but the steady beat of wings. Large, colossal. I thought the Gale Raptors had returned to finish the job. But it wasn't the Raptors. It was them, the winged women and men. One of them, a warrior woman, landed silently right beside me. She didn't speak. Her sharp eagle eyes pinned me down. A man from the world below, discarded into their sacred space. She uttered a word in a language that sounded like whistles and clicks. Then, she used her spear to deliberately nudge my hand off the rope. I fell. For a moment, I accepted my fate. But instead of falling, a powerful force jerked me back. Her hand. She and the others didn't talk. They acted. They quickly bound me with thick rope, like cargo, as if I were something dangerous that needed containment. Then came the terrifying ride. They lifted me, flying swiftly through the stone architecture and rope bridges. I was being taken to the heart of the Sky City. Lyra deposits Jax onto a large stone platform in a central square. Many Ethelwings gather, staring with uneasy curiosity and apprehension. They weren't loud, no yelling, just small sharp whistles and cold stares. I wasn't a person. I was an object, an anomaly. A grand entrance to a towering spire opens. Elder Kaelen emerges, flanked by two older, stern-looking warriors. Lyra kneels before Kaelen and reports in their language. Lyra points to Jax, then points dramatically to the sky. Kaelen approaches Jax. He uses his staff to lightly prod Jax's shoulder, scrutinizing him. Kaelen, where do you come from, mortal? From the chaos below? Or are you the harbinger of the storm we prayed would never come? Jax whispering.
Please.
I'm a pilot. My balloon. The storm. I knew I was speaking a language that meant nothing to them, but I needed them to understand. I was not an invader. Kaelen, take him to the wind cage. Tend to his wounds. He will be our prisoner until we understand what his presence signifies. Lyra and a few others carry Jax away. They pass through a small market area with artifacts made of bone and feathers. The wind cage, not a dungeon, but a dwelling on the cliff face, built for panoramic views, and to ensure that anyone inside cannot escape. Jax is gently placed inside the wind cage. Lyra removes the ropes, placing a bowl of water and some bandages beside him. She remains silent. Jax, gasping. Thank you. She looked at me one last time, then turned, spread her mighty wings, and flew away, leaving me alone, suspended above the world. The wind cage was not a prison, but perfect isolation. I was treated with pungent herbs and watched over, from a distance, by Lyra. Every movement was monitored. Jax tentatively checks the wind cage. He attempts to touch a crack or check a wooden beam. But Lyra, still distant, emits a sharp cautionary whistle. I began to learn. They don't talk. They whistle. They hiss. It was a language of air, requiring a subtlety a gearhead like me had never known. But I had my own weapon, curiosity. I observed everything I could from my captive perch. Quick cuts showing Ethelwings skillfully flying through narrow gaps, carrying bundles of materials on ropes. I noticed the suspension bridges. They were the lifeblood, yet many ropes and fastenings were badly frayed. The storms had inflicted more damage than I first realized. Lyra approaches the wind cage, placing food, exotic fruits and dried meat, on the threshold. She maintains distance. Jax, I win peace. The first word. It was terrible, but she heard it. It was a start, and my chance to act. Jax holds up his notebook with technical sketches, pointing to the damaged bridges, and then to a design for stronger, reinforced anchors he proposes. I couldn't explain it with words, but I could draw. I could show them. Their tech was failing, and I could help fix it. Lyra touches Jax's drawing, looks him in the eye. She takes the notebook and flies away with it, leaving Jax alone. I had to wait for the Aetherwing Council's response. Was us. My engineering notes were in the hands of those who lived by wind and stone. Kael, these mortal scribbles, they only show how to disrupt the balance of stone and wind. He seeks to deceive us. Lyra interjects, pleading Jax's case. She points up at cracks in the temple ceiling, illustrating the urgency of the situation. Kael finally hesitates. He gives a reluctant nod, signaling Lyra to take Jax to a damaged work area at the city's edge. Lyra escorts Jax, loosely bound by rope, to a damaged work area on a lower storm-battered spire. This area is known for frequent Gale Raptor attacks. They brought me to the ruins of the Wind Observatory, destroyed not by age, but by a force that twisted metal and tore rock. This was my stage. Jax discovers a small, almost intact control panel. He uses a salvaged tool from his utility belt to attempt to power it up. I fixed something. This panel wasn't measuring the wind, it was a receiver, and it was picking up something utterly foreign. Jax points emphatically at the screen, then points down, through the sea of clouds. He uses gestures to explain. This signal is human. Lyra, you lie. None of your kind knows this place exists. They abandoned the world above centuries ago. I knew I needed irrefutable proof, something they could grasp. I needed to prove the storms weren't omens, they were tools. A faint holographic 3D map projects from the panel. It shows Aerthos' location and a single strong blinking point below in the mining area. Jax, it generates the storms. It attracts them. It's not a plague, it's a machine. 2 Gale Raptors fly past rapidly, not attacking, but emitting cries of distress and confusion. The Gale Raptors, they were victims too. The invaders' poison reached the bottom of the food chain, throwing their habitat into chaos. Lyra touches Jax's shoulder, the first time not in warning, but in shared understanding. She trusts him. Lyra, we must take this to Kael, now. The peace of Aerthos is at stake. Jax and Lyra fly together, Jax being towed by Lyra on a rope line, back towards the main citadel at high speed. I was no longer a prisoner, I was an ally. And for the first time since my crash, I didn't feel fear. I felt purpose. Jax and Lyra stand before Elder Kael and the Council in the Temple of Winds. Lyra presents the repaired control panel and receiver. Kael, you bring the toys of the world below here, Lyra? You believe this matters more than the oaths of our ancestors? Jax steps forward. He activates the panel, and the 3D map displays Aerthos' location and the strong blinking point of Aether Corp. Jax, this is the source of the storms. A machine, Aether Corp. They are mining the foothills, and this is their interference. Lyra explains the distress of the Gale Raptors, using Aetherwing terms to describe the chaos in the food chain. For the first time, the Council was completely silent. The issue was no longer personal distrust, but the tribe's survival. The truth weighed on them. An older council member stands, pointing towards a locked doorway that leads deeper into the temple. Kael, take him, Jax, to the ancient wind chamber. It has been sealed. If what you say is true, it will hold the evidence. Jax, Lyra, and Elder Kael pass through the locked door. Inside is a dark, narrow corridor with ancient cracks running along the walls. This was where their main power source was sealed. The ancient windshield they once used to manipulate the atmosphere. A grand technological device of their ancestors. Lyra presses a symbol on the door. The door slowly rolls open with a loud stone grinding sound, revealing the chamber inside. Inside, the ancient windshield, a vast complex metal device with large turbines, sits dormant. Jax inspects the dead control panels, recognizing their archaic nature. Jax, it's dead, but not naturally. It was deliberately shut down. Something cut the main power. Kael told me of the Great Skepticism, a time when their ancestors feared their own technology and chose to live with the wind, but someone went beyond harmony. Jax finds a small hidden control panel. He realizes the Aether Corp frequency is the exact frequency required to repower the windshield. The irony was stunning. The enemy was providing the very key to defeat them. Aether Corp's jamming frequency was the power source we needed. Kael and the advisors stand silently, completely convinced. Their skepticism gives way to urgency and martial resolve. Kael, if that is the wind's way, we will ride the enemy's own storm, but I cannot send my warriors to fight in airless places. Jax discovers ancient blueprints for Aetherwing reconnaissance drones. He suggests modifying them to carry heavier payloads. It was time to teach them about mechanics. Their artisans were skilled, but they lacked speed and maneuverability. I needed to work with them. Jax and the artisans begin working in a large storage depot. Jax repairs circuits while the artisans rework the wings with metal and feathers. Lyra, we will not strike their base. We will defend. Only activate the windshield when they attack directly. Lyra suggested a passive defense plan, but I knew for Aether Corp defense was never enough. They needed to be persuaded to retreat. Jax proposes using kamikaze drones, old recon drones loaded with explosives or jamming material, to target Aether Corp's main jammer device, Kaelen. An offensive strike. That is the way of your kind. We left that behind. You push us onto the old path. Lyra, no, Elder. This is the action of survivors. Kaelen is right. We cannot wait. After a moment of tension, Kaelen grudgingly agrees to Jax's plan, but with one condition. Lyra must lead the attack. I was allowed to stay, not as a prisoner or a guest, but as their wind artisan, a title I had to earn with blood and steel. Jax and Lyra watch a group of shadow flyers assemble. They prepare for a final reconnaissance flight before the strike. Lyra touches Jax's shoulder, her expression deadly serious. There is a profound bond and absolute trust between them now. We had the plan, we had the weapon, now we needed action. The enemy was expecting a natural storm. They were going to get one of our making. An aerial shot of the Zephyr's wreckage on the cliff. Just above it, the ancient windshield begins to vibrate, emitting a faint, ominous glow. Jax stands with Lyra and two shadow flyers on a cliff edge. The clouds below are dense and thick. Lyra, we fly low, make no noise, recon, not combat. We need the exact location of the jammer device. The team leaps off the cliff. Lyra and the shadow flyers glide in the darkness. Jax uses a simple glider wing unit made by the artisans. My gliding was clumsy, but I was towed by those who knew the air better than anyone. We were penetrating the enemy's abyss. They break through the cloud layer, and below them is the Aether Corp base camp, brightly lit by industrial spotlights. Not a small mining operation. It was an industrial city. Colossal drills tore at the rock and armed aerial vehicles patrolled the perimeter. Lyra signals the shadow flyers to split off to approach from different angles. She and Jax continue toward the center. My first finding, a mobile lab. That's likely where they controlled the jamming frequency and the storms. Jax cuts his glider harness. Lyra and he approach the mobile lab by crawling through a large, dark ventilation pipe. They had complex security, but nothing designed to deal with winged people. We were inside. Inside the lab, a team of Aether Corp technicians is working on a large console. The main jammer device is humming in the adjacent room. Jax, that's it. The machine making all that noisy frequency. I need to attach my transponder close to it. Jax and Lyra sneak into the jammer room. The air visibly vibrates from the strong frequency. Jax affixes his device in a concealed spot. My device wasn't a bomb. It was a beacon. The moment we fire up the windshield, it'll turn this base into a lighthouse for what's coming. Jax and Lyra quickly retreat from the mobile lab, heading back toward the ventilation pipe. They know the exit will be more dangerous than the entrance. Jax and Lyra crawl out of the ventilation pipe. An Aether Corp mercenary is taking a smoke break nearby, oblivious to their presence. Walking was much harder. We couldn't fly. Searchlights and thermal cameras were everywhere. I had to use engineering knowledge to blind them. They pass a section with fuel containers. Lyra notices a chemical leak warning sign and signals Jax to steer clear. I discovered they were mining a toxic and rare ore. It was the source of the environmental instability and the Gale Raptor's frenzy. Lyra brushes against a discarded attack drone wing. The drone suddenly activates. The alarm blares. We were made. Recon mission over. Lyra yelled something in Ethel wing. Shadow flyers had to retreat immediately. Lyra and Jax sprint away from gunfire. Lyra uses her agility to dodge, but Jax's human speed slows her down. Our physical difference was a liability. I couldn't fly. She wouldn't abandon me. We were trapped. A mercenary gets too close. Jax throws the stun device. The mercenary screams as he's electrocuted, falling down. Lyra, up! We need altitude. He will help us fly. Jax uses climbing knowledge and Lyra uses brute strength to scramble onto the colossal freight drone just as it lifts off. We were airborne but not safe yet. An Aether Corp aerial vehicle rose up, locking onto our position. Lyra hurls her spear at the aerial vehicle, causing a dent but not enough to disable it. I needed a bigger target. This cargo drone could be a weapon if I could reach its controls. Jax rips open the freight drone's control panel and reprograms its trajectory, sending it hurtling back towards the aerial vehicle. The collision occurs. The freight drone and the aerial vehicle explode in an industrial fireball, creating a fierce vortex. We both survived the blast, but we were in freefall. Then we saw them. The shadow flyers had returned. Lyra, Jax, and the shadow flyers fly back toward Aerthos. They see the jammer device still operating, but now marked by Jax's beacon. We failed to disable it, but we had the exact location. The plan changed. It was time to activate the windshield and call for backup. Elder Kael stands on the temple, looking up at the black sky. He gives a final order with a resounding whistle. War has begun. Activating the windshield will take time. We may have days, or just hours. Every moment was gold, and every person had to work together. Jax is deep inside the windshield chamber, splicing modern cables from his balloon into the ancient Aethelwing machinery. The hardest part wasn't the engineering, it was trust. Lyra had to convince the hardest warriors that my metal wouldn't spoil their feathers. Jax introduces a design for simple night vision goggles, made from his salvaged lenses and Aethelwing bone frames. Lyra, we have the air advantage, but Aether Corp has the reach. His devices will help us see the enemy in the dark. Quick cut. Aethelwing artisans mass-producing the kamikaze drones based on Jax's design, affixing jamming materials with bone and feathers. While we prepared, the storms continued to rage. The Aether Corp presence was hurting their world, and they had to protect themselves. Lyra leads Jax to a secret area on a cliff face. This is where the injured Gale Raptors are treated and fed. They didn't see the Gale Raptors as enemies, but as sick creatures. I saw the profound connection between them and nature. Jax spots a shattered Gale Raptor nest filled with abandoned, cracked eggs. He looks at Lyra's eyes. Lyra, they don't attack because they want to. They are homeless. Their fury is grief. Elder Kael calls the warriors to assembly. He makes a final declaration pointing to Jax as a trusted ally. Kael, this mortal has given us new sight. Lyra will lead. He will be our mechanical arm. We fight for our ancestors and for the sick creatures. Kael and Jax are in the windshield control room. Kael places his hand on a huge stone switch. Jax prepares to hit the activation button. May the wind spirits protect us. We have done what we can. There is only one final act. Activation. The ancient windshield is fully engaged, emitting a powerful blue energy surge that creates an invisible defensive membrane around Aerthos. Aether Corp's frequency was immediately drawn in by the shield. Their interference was now our power source, but they would realize that soon. Lyra and the Shadow Flyers fly low, using Jax's night vision goggles. They move toward the Aether Corp base for the kamikaze strike. They spotted us, not by sight, but by radar. The jammer device turned into our lighthouse, and they sent everything they had. Lyra gives the order. The Shadow Flyers release Jax's kamikaze drones. They crash into the Aether Corp drone swarm, creating an electromagnetic explosion wave. The aerial battle bought us distraction, but our main target was still active. Lyra and two warriors breached the base, streaking toward the jammer device, using their agility to evade mercenaries. They were fighting for the heart of the enemy, but I noticed the energy pressure in the windshield was increasing too fast. It was unstable. Jax, danger! If the windshield keeps drawing power, it will overload, and the blast will destroy Aerthos. Lyra plunges her spear into the jammer device. A huge spark and the Aether Corp device is finally disabled. The jammer was off, but now the windshield had no stable power source. I had to disconnect the power myself or we would all die. Kael tries to stop Jax, not understanding his actions. Jax has to push Kael away and make the cut. Hard cut. A small electromagnetic explosion happens in the control room. Jax is thrown backward, unconscious. The windshield shuts down. The chaos ceased. No great explosion, just silence. Lyra looked up at the sky, knowing something had changed. Lyra orders the remaining warriors to regroup. They take flight from the defeated Aether Corp base, heading back towards Aerthos to check on Jax. Jax shut down the windshield just in time, but the chaos in the Aether Corp base had provoked a fierce reaction. The fight wasn't over. It had just begun. Lyra and the Shadow Flyers land back in Aerthos. They rush to the control chamber where Kael is tending to an unconscious Jax. Lyra, he saved us. He cut the electromagnetic power. The jammer is destroyed, but this was only the first skirmish. Kael touches Jax's forehead. He notices a small lingering electromagnetic burn and applies an ancient glowing green herb paste. I was only out for minutes, waking to a throbbing headache, but I had no time to recover. I had to plan for the inevitable retaliation attack. Jax, they will attack, directly and in force. We need to deploy the secondary windshield measures, and the wind traps. Kael points to the Aerthos map. He reveals a network of ancient wind chambers and pressure vent gates that can be weaponized. This was the first time I saw Kael engaged in combat. He wasn't just a leader, he was a defensive architect. Quick cut. Aethelwings fly out, installing large mechanical components, based on Jax's design, into the pressure vent gates on the spires. We were turning the entire city into a trap. We would use the altitude, the air pressure, and the enemy's own ignorance of this environment. Lyra leads a team of warriors to the most strategic battle point, the Cloud Gate. She sets up wire traps and stone anchors. Lyra was our shield, the best warrior. I trusted her more than I ever trusted my own technology. Jax installs a crude radio communication system on top of the temple, using salvaged parts of the Zephyr. I needed communication with Lyra.
What is it?
Just a push of a button, I could warn her of any change in the enemy formation. View from Jax's radio system. 5 massive red dots rise from the Aether Corp base. The attack has begun. Their flying machines weren't balloons. They were heavy gunships, designed for intimidation. They flew directly into the pressure vent gates. Jax yells into the comms device. Kael gives the order with a sharp, piercing whistle. The wind trap activates. The first gunship is violently struck by the high-pressure blast. It spins out of control, slams into the cliff face, and explodes. It was a massive surprise. But they learned fast. The remaining 3 split formation, seeking a softer target. Lyra and her warriors. Lyra uses Jax's comms device. Jax,
Lyra,
overcomms.
they're here.
3 ships heading your
Hands
way.
are ready.
Still one holding high altitude. Lyra signals the Shadow Flyers to deploy the wire traps across the Cloud Gate. The 3 gunships fly directly into the area. Their steel was too tough, but our traps were made of reinforced sinew and feathers, designed to foul blades, not destroy. The 2 remaining gunships turn around. Lyra and the Shadow Flyers suddenly launch out of cover, throwing bone-cased jamming devices at them. It was my tech built by their artisans. The jammers slowed the machines, enough for the Gale Raptors to intervene. A colossal Gale Raptor rips the wing off one gunship. The second gunship is dragged down by another Raptor, slamming into the cliff face. They fought not for us. They fought for their home. We gave them the chance, and they took it. The final gunship, at high altitude, recognizes defeat and turns tail. Lyra and the Shadow Flyers watch it retreat. We won the first assault. Jax's technology and Aerthos' nature had defeated the machines, but the enemy had seen our defenses. Jax on the radio. Lyra, you did it. They're retreating. Is everyone safe? Lyra, overcomms. Safe, but they will return stronger. Kael enters the control room, looking at Jax with unprecedented respect. He places his hand on Jax's shoulder. I was no longer mortal. I was Kaelen. My name in their language. It meant more than any title. Lyra returns. She looks at Jax and Kael, giving a strained smile for the first time. She carries a damaged Aether Corp device. She brought a gift. The enemy's technology. I could use it to learn what they were really up to. Their bigger plan. Jax uses small tools to repair the device. Its screen flickers on, displaying a satellite map of the entire mountain range. The plan wasn't just a mine. They were building something, a vast infrastructure to control the entire atmosphere. Lyra and Kael look at the screen. They realize that protecting Aerthos is only a tiny part of the problem. Jax, they don't want to mine the rock. They want to control the wind. They want to master everything at this altitude. Jax looks at Lyra. Aerthos was just the first obstacle. The real battle was yet to begin. We won, but the cost was clear. Aerthos sustained minor damage, and we knew Aether Corp would never forgive this humiliation. Lyra and the warriors return in high spirits. The artisans cheer for them, and Kael manages a rare, genuine smile for the first time in years. For the first time, the tribe was truly united, not by tradition but by survival. They had put their faith in a stranger. Jax, Lyra, and a team of artisans reach the wreckage of the downed gunship. It is a mess of molten metal and debris. Lyra, these machines were stronger than anything we've seen. They will return in greater numbers. The windshield won't be enough. Jax finds a near-intact black box unit buried inside the wreckage. He carefully retrieves it and carries it back to his makeshift lab. This black box was the enemy's confession. I could read its data, technical specs, backup frequencies, and the anti-windshield plan. The screen shows a schematic. Aether Corp is preparing a larger secondary jammer capable of firing through the air pressure barrier. They were anticipating. They knew we fixed the windshield. They were building a weapon to turn our defense into a death trap. Jax presents his findings. The windshield will only be effective for another 24 hours before Aether Corp's new weapon is deployed. Defense was impossible. I had to propose the only plan that made sense. Destroy that jammer before it's completed. Jax proposes a counterattack on the base camp. The plan involves using forgotten access points to infiltrate and trigger the jammer's self-destruct. Kael, offense is the act of desperation. We tried it once before. It brought only greater ruin. You push us onto the old path, Kaelen. Lyra steps forward, facing Kael. She places her hand firmly on Jax's shoulder, showing her unwavering support. Lyra. Elder, we must face it. Offense is a risk, but inaction is a certainty of defeat. We don't have time to build new defenses. Kael looks from Lyra's eyes to Jax's. He realizes Lyra has found a new kind of leadership in Jax, one willing to do what is necessary. Jax. Elder, I will go alone if I must. But we increase our odds with warriors who know how to move in the shadows. Infiltration is the only way. Kael finally sighs heavily. He looks at Jax and Lyra, accepting the plan's necessity. He places a heavy hand on Lyra's shoulder, granting permission. It was the final consent. Kael gave us the authority. Now came the hard part, picking the team. We needed the best flyers, not the best fighters. Lyra selects 3 specific shadow flyers, 2 males, 1 female, who demonstrated their stealth skills in earlier scenes. The team was small. Lyra, 3 shadow flyers, and me, 5 against a heavily armed industrial base. The odds were a cruel joke. Jax is forging small lock-picking tools and personalized radio jamming units from salvaged materials for each team member. Lyra and the shadow flyers equip themselves with light, dark, non-reflective armor. They prepare ancient grappling lines and bows arrows. They taught me their mountain climbing knots. I taught them how to disable a motion sensor with a precise cable tap. The team gathers at a secret takeoff point. Kael arrives, carrying a ceremonial bone dagger for Jax. Jax, I will carry it, Elder. I will bring back peace, or nothing at all. Lyra and the shadow flyers launch, towing Jax on his improved glider. They descend rapidly into the cloud-filled abyss. The infiltration mission has begun. The infiltration mission had begun. This time, we weren't flying above the clouds. We were flying down into the abyss. Entry point, a forgotten mountain fissure. Lyra and the team move with absolute silence. Jax uses his personalized jamming unit to mask the team's heat signatures from Aether Corp radar. I knew exactly where we were going. The black box data pointed to an old maintenance portal that was scrubbed from the official blueprints. Jax uses his lockpicking set to breach the portal. It requires patience and precision. Lyra stands guard behind him, spear ready. It was designed to keep things in, not out, the opposite of their modern systems. Inside is an old, wet, unmaintained tunnel. This is the original Aethelwing mining route. Jax and the team have to crawl through a constricted area, choked with old metal cables and broken piping. We went deeper, beneath the main base camp. I could feel the electrical grid of Aether Corp humming above. I knew we were in position. Lyra signals the shadow flyers to climb a vertical ventilation shaft. They will go ahead to disable security cameras. Jax and Lyra find the main access door to the area where the secondary jammer is being built. A keycard is required for entry. Once again, modern tech was the barrier, but luckily I found a workaround, a circuit breaker panel under the floor. Jax short-circuits the system with a simple wire. The door slides open with a loud hiss. The alarm does not sound, but the lights flicker. They step into a vast, noisy construction bay. The colossal secondary jammer is being assembled. It was bigger than I imagined, and heavily guarded. We had to figure out how to place the explosives from Lyra into its core. Lyra hands Jax a packet of plastic explosive hidden inside an Aethelwing leather pouch. It is not a bomb, but a powerful pressure stabilizer material. Aethelwing mining tech. Lyra and Jax waiting. The 3 shadow flyers rappel down from the vent shaft, signaling the area is momentarily clear of security cameras. They disabled the vision systems, but we only had minutes before the patrol shift changed. We had to move fast and precisely. An Aether Corp mercenary unexpectedly turns around. Lyra reacts instantly, launching a dart tipped with a powerful sedative. No trace could be left. The 3 shadow flyers rushed in, dragging the guard into the shadows and concealing him. Jax and Lyra reach the core of the jammer. Jax finds a small auxiliary power port perfect for placing the explosive. This core was heavily shielded. I had to make it look like a catastrophic technical failure, not an outside attack. Jax sets a countdown using a simple mechanical timer, ensuring no radio signals can be detected. The task was done. Now we needed to leave. But I noticed another locked door near the core. It seemed more important than the jammer. Jax. Lyra, I have to see inside. That's not on the schematics. That's the heart of everything. Jax uses his short-circuit technique again to breach the door. Inside is a clean, dark room with a single object illuminated. It wasn't a weapon. It was a brand new energy technology. A glowing crystal mass on a pedestal. It was drawing power from nature. Jax touches an external monitor. I realized it. They weren't mining rock. They were harvesting pure atmospheric energy. Lyra touches the containment glass. She closes her eyes. She felt the pain. The crystal was sucking the life force from the mountain itself. Jax quickly removes a small data module from the crystal's control panel. He needs proof of Aether Corp's actions. The ticking of the clock? We were out of time. We had the data and the charge was set. Retreat. They rush back into the construction bay. Lyra whistles urgently to signal the shadow flyers. The first Aether Corp worker spots them. The alarm blares. Red lights flash throughout the base. Run, that was all we could do. The countdown was ending. The secondary jammer is destroyed by the pressure charge. Not a grand explosion, but a violent internal collapse. Jax and Lyra, with the shadow flyers, dive headfirst down the ventilation shaft, escaping the collapse of the room. They would know it was an attack, and they would never let us leave. Our exit was blocked. A fierce, desperate fight breaks out. Shadow flyers use slingshots and poison darts to stun the mercenaries. Lyra and Jax fight side by side. Lyra uses the ceremonial dagger, from Kaelen, to block an attack and stab a mercenary in the shoulder. We pushed them back, just enough to unlock the portal. We had to get back to Aerthos with this evidence. Jax and the team ascend from the fissure, seeing the Aether Corp base engulfed in chaos and smoke. We won a battle, but we had declared war. We returned to Aerthos with a victory and a terrible secret. Destroying the jammer was only a delay. The real threat lay in the energy crystal core. Jax projects the stolen data from the crystal core to Kaelen and the Elders. The map shows a spreading area of energetic imbalance and depletion. Kaelen. They are killing the mountain, draining its life force. When it dies, we fall. This was no longer a tribal issue. This was an everyone issue living beneath the mountains. We needed an alliance. We needed the lowlands. Jax prepares the refurbished Zephyr. Quieter, faster, and better camouflaged with dark ethyl wing materials. Lyra is securing her wing harness for the long flight. Our destination, Wind City, the last lowland city I trusted, home to the supposedly ethical interim government. Jax and Lyra land secretly in an abandoned industrial warehouse on the outskirts of Wind City. Lyra steps onto the unfamiliar flat-paved ground. Lyra had never set foot down here. She found it vast and polluted, a betrayal of nature. They walk through dark back alleys. Jax searches for his old contact, Colonel Maeve, an influential interim government official. They meet Colonel Maeve in a dark underground cafe. Maeve is a cold, sharply dressed, middle-aged woman. Jax. Maeve, Aether Corp isn't just mining. They're killing the mountain with the crystal core. I have the data to prove it. Maeve examines the data. Her face is unreadable. She asks about the data's origin. Lyra and Jax stay silent, confirming they infiltrated the base. Maeve. If this is true, it's an act of war against this entire region. I need physical proof. I need to see the crystal core. Lyra knew this was a trap. She felt something was wrong. There was no outrage, only cold calculation. Jax. That's impossible. We nearly died getting this data. We need you to help us go public with it, Maeve. Maeve. Going public is impossible. Jax, you don't understand. Aether Corp's plan is part of a larger deal. That was the moment I knew. Maeve wasn't an ally. She was Aether Corp's pawn. She sold us out. The cafe door bursts open. A team of heavily armored Aether Corp mercenaries led by a cold, sharp-faced commander rush in. Lyra. We're boxed in. Keep distance. Lyra spins, flipping the small table over to create a barricade. Jax throws an electromagnetic jammer device onto the floor. A flash of light and a high-pitched electronic whine stun the mercenaries. Just enough time to run. I grabbed Lyra's hand. We had to get back to the Zephyr before they disabled my escape system. An Aether Corp aerial vehicle, patrol craft, spots them from above. A powerful searchlight locks onto the alley. Lyra scales a low-rise building with astonishing agility, using her sheer strength to haul Jax up after her. For the first time, Lyra had to use her wings. Just a brief moment, enough to glide across the huge gap between the rooftops. They reach the abandoned warehouse. Mercenaries have already surrounded the main doors. Jax has to activate another emergency exit. I activated the cargo lift, sending it up toward the ceiling. It was the only escape, but it would be visible. Lyra uses her spear to fend off the mercenaries below, buying time for Jax to reach the Zephyr. Jax ignites the Zephyr just as it smashes through the roof. The airship zooms upward into the night sky. We escaped, but we had no allies. Maeve betrayed us. Now it was us against Aether Corp, and the lowlands were also the enemy. Lyra and Jax look at each other. She places a comforting hand on his arm. We were heading home, to Aerthos, the only place left we could trust. The betrayal in the lowlands made it clear. We couldn't trust anyone but ourselves. The solution wasn't in their technology, but in nature itself. Jax is analyzing the crystal core data. A graph shows its energy frequency is completely unstable and damaging the ambient environment. Jax. The crystal core thrives on imbalance. It drains life force to self-repair. If we balance it, it will implode. Lyra looks at Jax. She understands his point about balance. It aligns with the tribe's ancient philosophy of the mountains. But the counterweight must be a pure energy source. Something entirely natural. Lyra knew where to find it. The heart of the wind. Jax and Lyra venture into the upper wind cavern. It's a sparkling cave system filled with natural light-emitting wind crystals. Elder Kael is waiting for them. He is holding an ancient lantern and collecting a fine glowing crystal dust. Kael. This is the balancing solvent. It has slept for centuries. It reacts to absolute imbalance. This solvent was the key. We needed a large amount to overwhelm the crystal core, but it was also incredibly volatile. Jack's working to create a delivery device from cleaned up Aether Corp tech fragments. It must keep the balancing solvent stable. Lyra. We must hurry. The air is already heavier. The mountain is in pain. They are increasing the energy extraction. As Jax analyzes the data further, he discovers a disturbing fact. There is a chemical additive inside the core. It wasn't just an energy problem. This compound T5 was a biological toxin. It wasn't just draining power, it was rotting the ecosystem. Lyra hands Jax a diseased plant sample, a rare windflower that has turned black and brittle. Physical proof of the toxin T5. We weren't just fighting for the tribe's survival. We were fighting to prevent the extinction of all mountain life. The choice was clear. We had to leave immediately. If the T5 toxin diffused, it would kill the wind crystals, sending Aerthos plummeting. We had to neutralize the crystal core and counter the toxin. Lyra and Kael prepare an ancient concentrated antidote. It's a mixture of tree sap and crystal powder, reactive to T5. Jax modifies his old gas mask, using ethyl wing woven fabric to enhance its biological toxin filtering capabilities. This time, we weren't sneaking in. We were going in with an open assault. The target had to be destroyed quickly and we needed to do it from above. Kael and the other elders gather the shadow flyers. They promise to engage in the final assault, protecting Lyra and Jax. Jax mounts the delivery device onto a simple launcher mechanism secured under the wing of the Zephyr. Lyra would command the flight team. I would aim and trigger the balancing solvent. We had only one shot to hit the crystal core. The shadow flyer squadron, around 10, takes flight. They move with absolute speed and silence, forming a protective arrowhead formation. As we flew past the no man's land, we realized Aether Corp had intensified their defenses. Numerous aerial patrol drones dotted the sky. A patrol drone spots the fleet. It emits a piercing alarm and begins firing on the shadow flyer's formation. Lyra executes a sharp evasion maneuver with the Zephyr. She commands the shadow flyers to scatter and approach the target from multiple vectors. Jax detonates a small EMP blast to short-circuit the nearest patrol drone. It spirals silently to the ground. We reach the main base. The crystal core was protected by an energetic shield dome. The shot was impossible. Lyra orders a designated shadow flyer to sacrifice himself to shatter the dome's power source at a weak point. The moment the shield vanishes, a dense, sickly green biological mist begins leaking from the crystal core. It is the T5 toxin being released. Jax. They're releasing the toxin. Lyra, no time left. Fly in. Jax rapidly pulls on his modified gas mask. The Zephyr plunges through the green toxic mist. Lyra struggles to keep the ship steady, blinded by the toxin. They reach the crystal core chamber from above. The massive crystal core is glowing with a sinister green light. Jax. Balance or death. Fire. Jax slams the launch button. The balancing solvent hits the crystal core, causing a violent reaction. The crystal emits a piercing, high-pitched scream. Balance was restored, but at what cost? The crystal core was hit, but the balancing solvent created a massive energy surge, not silence. The Aether Corp base was plunged into violent chaos. Lyra struggles to pilot the Zephyr out of the chaos, narrowly avoiding falling structural debris. We couldn't fly far. The entire area was frozen by a colossal energy field radiating from the crystal's implosion, their own trap. Lyra is forced to make an emergency landing of the Zephyr onto a small open clearing near the Aether Corp base, barely escaping the energy field's pull. We were down, but they knew. The main security force was converging. It was the final ground battle. Jax and Lyra scramble out of the damaged Zephyr hull. Jax carries a satchel full of small sabotage devices. Lyra engages the security formation. She is a dancer of war, using her wings for evasion and creating distractions. Jax. My goal wasn't to kill, it was to disable them, their shields, their communications. Lyra cries out. An energy blast from a security guard hits her wing. She is thrown to the ground, clutching her injured wing. Jax rushes to defend Lyra. He uses the ceremonial dagger to deflect a blow from a security guard. I wasn't a warrior, but I was Kaelen. I fought with my heart and their technology failed them, but I couldn't last. The Aether Corp forces overwhelmed them. Lyra and Jax are separated and restrained with energy cuffs. A high-ranking Aether Corp commander, a new severe-looking antagonist, emerges from the base wreckage, looking down at Jax and Lyra with contempt. Commander, you failed. The crystal core will regenerate under our control. We have all the data we needed. And now we have our traitorous mortal. We were defeated, but even in captivity I felt a vibration. Not from Aether Corp, it came from above. The shape in the sky is closer. It is Kaelen and a colossal, enraged fleet of Gale Raptors. The energy surge drew them. It wasn't tribal aid, it was nature's fury. The Gale Raptors had returned to defend their home, and they showed no mercy. Kaelen leaps off his raptor using the chaos to reach Jax and Lyra. He uses an ancient sickle to slash through the energy cuffs. Jax and Lyra are free, but Lyra is injured. Jax helps her up. They both see the crystal core regenerating in the distance. Lyra, it's repairing itself. The T5 toxin is reinforcing it. We have to destroy it completely. Jax realizes the balancing solvent left a weakness in the system. He needs extreme thermal reaction to trigger a permanent collapse. Jax, Lyra, I need the fuel cells from the Zephyr. Highly volatile. Kaelen, hold them off. Kaelen uses his sickle to fight the remaining guards. Lyra, though injured, fires arrows at the guards' visor gaps. Jax strains to drag 2 heavy fuel cells away from the Zephyr wreckage. He begins pulling them toward the regenerating crystal core. The Aether Corp commander sees Jax's intention. He aims his weapon at Jax, but Kaelen tackles him just as he fires. The crystal core was nearly finished regenerating. I had to go faster. There was no time for a remote detonation. Jax reaches the crystal core, which is glowing with a toxic green light. He uses the ceremonial dagger to puncture the fuel tanks. Lyra screams. She knows Jax can't escape the thermal explosion. She gathers her last strength and flies toward him despite her injured wing. Jax sees Lyra coming. He has only a second. He triggers a spark from a device in his hand. Lyra snatches Jax just before the blast hits. She uses her body and her stronger wing to shield him from the intense thermal wave. The crystal core is utterly destroyed in a final burst of light and heat. The entire Aether Corp base begins to shake and collapse into the ground. Kaelen and the remaining Raptors have won the ground battle. Kaelen finds an unconscious Jax and Lyra near the extinguished core wreckage. I woke up. The base was gone. Lyra was badly hurt, but she saved me. Balance was restored. The mountain would live. Jax makes his choice. He uses the remnants of the Zephyr to build a broadcast station and an advanced healing device for Lyra. I no longer belonged to the lowlands. I was Kaelen, a wind architect. Lyra and I would stay here, with the flying people. Together, we would build the future.